We're here on the top of Daf Dalid Omid Beis, and we're studying the Ika Diamr. And the Mishnah said that Ein Sholem Esak Shamim El Samach L'Kshamim. So the Gemara says, Lema Rabbi Yeshua. Can we attribute this Mishnah to Rabbi Yeshua, the Omar, whose opinion is that we begin Haskaras Shvurz Kshamim on Shmini Atzeres Mishas Hanachah, so after we put the lulav away. And that's the time that's closer to the Gishanim. And the din of Haskara is very similar to the din of She'ela. And just like we don't ask for Gishanim until it's Samach Uzmanam, so too, we don't mention Gishanim in Mach Baruch Bardagoshim Amarava, Afilu Tema Rabbi Eliezer. We can even reconcile our Mishnah with Rabbi Eliezer, who holds that we begin Haskaras Krus Gishavim from the first day of Sukkot, and She'el L'chud, Vazkar L'chud. It's even though we don't ask for Gishavim until it's Samach L'zmana, but nevertheless, when Mazkir Gishavim earlier, in order to get a ritzui for Gishavim. Now we learned in the Mishnah of Yehuda Omer ha'over l'tfei ha'teva b'yom tov ha'achron shel chag ha'achron, the person who is the shliach tzibur on the last day of Chag, which means on Shmini Atzeres, he Eino Maskir. The Rishon Eino Maskir, it's not the first one. And when it comes to Yontif Rishon Shel Pesach, the Rishon is Maskir, and the Achron is Eino Maskir. The Gemara asks a question by raising what seems to be a contradiction in the statements of Rabbi Yehuda. In our Mishnah, Rabbi Yehuda says that Sof Zman She'elas Kshavim is on the first day of Pesach. And that's specifically at Tfilas Mincha. We're but yet we have a Mishnah on Daf Hey, and we mentioned it before. Ad Mosai Sholim Esak Shamim. Till when do we continue asking for Geshamim in our Tefillah? In other words, we're saying Talamot Levracha. Is Rabbi Yehuda Omer? Rabbi Yehuda is of the opinion Ad She'yavar Pesach, until after the Shvi Shel Pesach. And during the entire course of Talamot Pesach, we ask for Geshamim. On Tfilas Arvis on Motzi Shvi Shel Pesach, that's when we stop asking for Geshamim. That's the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda quoted in the Mishnah. And yet, Rabbi Yehuda in our Mishnah says that the Sof Zman She'elas Kshavim is on the first day of Pesach. How do we reconcile this? The Mishnah on Daf Hey also records the Shita Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir Omer Ad She'avar Nisan. We continue asking for Geshamim until the end of the month of Nisan. Rav Chizlo Kasha Kan Lishol Kan Lahazkir. When Rabbi Yehuda says in that Mishnah, Ad She'avar Pesach, that's as far as She'elas Geshamim. But Kan Lahazkir, we conclude and terminate our Askaras Geshamim of Masechet Maragoshin on the first day of Pesach. Mishal Shol the Azil, even though we terminate our mention and Sheva, thanking Hashem and lauding Hashem for Geshamim at the beginning of Pesach, but nevertheless we continue to ask for Geshamim during the entire course of Pesach. But Lahazkir, that's when we stop on Yom Tov Rishon Pesach. This statement of Rav Chizda is very, very difficult. Amar Ula, Hadar Rav Chizda, Kasha, it says difficult at Chometz L'Shinayim Ve'ashan Le'nayim. An idiomatic expression. It's like vinegar to teeth or smoke for the eyes. How can you tell me that we're asking for Gishamim, but we're not going to thank Hashem for the Gishamim? We're saying Talamot Levracha as a Bakash, as a She'elas Gishamim, but we're not going to be Mazkir, we're not going to mention Masha Baruch Meragoshem. I have a Kal V'chom, it's just the opposite. For example, in Tfilas Shmini Atzeres, we're not going to ask for Geshamim in Tfilah, for saying Talamot Levracha, because it's Yontif. And on Yontif, we don't have the bracha, the ninth bracha of Parnasa Baruch Aleinu. But nevertheless, we certainly maskir, we say Masha Baruch Maragoshem, even on the Yontif, on the Shabbos, etc. So how can you tell me that we terminate according to is the interpretation of Yehuda. We terminate our she'elas kishamim at the end of Pesach. I'm sorry, right? In other words, we meant meaning to say we continue until we terminate, until the end of Pesach, and yet we're going to stop saying Mashiach Ruach and be Maskir Shama on the first day of Pesach. Elamar Ula says, I have a different approach to reconcile what we thought was an apparent contradiction between two statements of Rabbi Yehuda. Trei Tanoi, I'll leave it to Rabbi Yehuda. These two Mishnayos were formulated by two different Tanoim. Each one had a different tradition as to what Rabbi Yehuda holds. And the Tan of our Mishnah holds that according to Rabbi Yehuda, we are mafsik lahazkir, the Haskaras Kshamim, is on Musaf of Yontiv Rishon Shal Pesach. And of course, we're not going to ask for the Kshamim once we're mafsik lishol. Once we're mafsik lahazkir, we're mafsik lishol, because there's no possibility of continuing she'elas Kshamim after. So the Tana of the Mishnah later on in Daf Hey, he had a transmission in Rabbi Yehuda that we continue to ask for Gishamim until the end of Pesach, and how much more so do we praise Hashem with Azkara all through Pesach. Rabbi Yosef Omar, he offers an alternative reconciliation of the apparent contradiction of Rabbi Yehuda. What does it mean? Ad she'avora Pesach. The Mishnah Daf Hey says Ad she'avora Pesach. Ad she'avor shliach tzibur rishon. He meant to say the first Shliach Tzibur of Shachris, Hayored, meaning Hayored L'fnei HaTeva beyond the Fritzl Shel Pesach. And we're going to continue to be Mazkir Gishamim until and including Shachris of the first day of Pesach. But Shliach Tzibur Sheni, he's going to be Mispal Musaf. He's not going to be Mazkir Gishamim. So therefore, the words of Rabbi Yehuda as quoted in the later Mishnah Daf Hey are exactly identical to the Mishnah here quoting Rabbi Yehuda that Tfilas Shachris, there is She'ela and there's Haskara, but in Musaf there's no She'ela, there's no Haskara. Amalei Abai turns to Rabbi Yosef and he says, She'ela b'yantif mi ika? What are you talking about She'ela on yantif? We don't have a bracha of Borei Chaleinu Sashon as those asking for rains during Yontif. In fact, there are no bakashos whatsoever on Yontif. How could Rabbi Yehuda say that Sholem al Gishamim until after Tfilas Shachris of Yontif Rishon, as if Shachris on Yontif on the first day of Pesach requires She'elas Gishamim? That's impossible. Malay Rabbi Yosef responds in Shoel Miturgamon, whole new interpretation of She'ela here in the Mishnah. Because for sure the Tzibur is not going to be asking for Gishamim on the Tefillah of Yontif. There is no bracha Baruch Aleinu in the Tefillah of Yontif. But nevertheless, the Miturgamon, who was in charge of translating the drasha of Yontif for the sake of the Kahal, for the sake of the Tzibur, he would say during his drasha, Orech Aleinu, he would sort of secretly, in a concealed sort of way, camouflage, he would integrate a She'elas Gishamim into his targum of the drasha. So the Gemara says, on Shoel Dover Shein Etzarech LaTzibur. If there's no She'elas Gishamim, why would the Miturgama be asking for Gishamim? The Tzibur is not asking for Gishamim. Why would he be asking for Gishamim? Therefore, the Gemara rejects this answer of Rav Yosef el-Machfarta. The one that's clear and acceptable is Kiddush Ula, like we saw in Ula, that is Machlokas Tanoim as to what the Shita Rabbi Yehuda is. Rabba offers another alternative to reconcile the apparent contradiction in Rabbi Yehuda. What does it mean? Ad sheyavra Pesach, ad sheyavra zman shchitas Pesach. In other words, the beginning of the Zman for Shchitas Pesach is Chatzos Hayom on Yudalid B'Nitzan on Erev Pesach. And the end of the Zman for She'elas Gishamim is with Tfilas Shachris of Yudalid B'Nitzan. So we get to the Zman Shchita, which is afternoon, Mincha time, we already omit Shelas Gishamim. And as far as the termination of Haskaras Gishamim, that's going to be Tfilas Shacharis Shel Yontif Rishon Shel Pesach. And we're going to make this distinction between She'ela and Haskara. So whereas She'ela will terminate with Ad V'Ad B'Chlal Shacharis on Yudalet Erev Pesach, we continue with Haskara until Shacharis on the first day of Pesach. Ukfilaso came Sofa. Just like the din is knowing at the beginning of the Mosag Gishamim, so too it is at the end of the period of time, the Onas Gishamim. Matchilaso Maskir, Afal Pishen Shoel. We ask for Gishamim after Pesach, but we already begin to mention and thank Hashem on Shmini Atzeres. Is Af Sofa Maskir, Afal Pishen Shoel. So too on Yom Tov Rishon Pesach will be Maskir Gishamim, even though we've already terminated on Erev Pesach with Mincha She'elas Gishamim. Amalei Abaye, Yishlei V'Tchilas. I can understand the logic that compels us to make that distinction at the beginning of Yemos HaGishamim. Maskir, he should mention Gishamim even before he gets to Shema. Haskara Nami Ritzui She'elah, because he's asking a ritzui. A ritzui by Haskaras Gishamim is going to sort of appease God so that the Gishamim, when it's time for the Gishamim, the Gishmei Bracha will begin to come down, and that's going to be after the Chag. Elasofo, but now we're at the end of the Mosag Gishamim. Ma ritzui she'ela ika. Why should we be continuing with a ritzui of Haskaras Gishamim going into the first day of Pesach, and you've already terminated asking for Gishamim on Erev Pesach? So what's the purpose of that Haskara? The Mafarta Kedula, once again, the Gemara advocates in favor of the answer of Ula. To Tanoim, as to transmitting the Shita Rabbi. Omar Rav Asi, Omar Rav Yochanan, Halacha ki Rabbi Yehuda. We accept Allah like Rabbi Yehuda, that we begin Haskaras Gishamim already on Shmini Atzeres with Musaf of Shmini Atzeres, and we're going to mention Gishamim. And we pass like Rabbi Yehuda that as far as the end of Haskaras Gishamim, that's the Tfilas Musaf of Yom Tov Rishon Shel Pesach. Amalei Rav Zera Rav Asi. Rav Zera is not happy with Rav Asi's transmission of Rabbi Yochanan that we pass like Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yochanan Hafi. Did Rabbi Yochanan actually say that we pass in Allah to Rabbi Yehuda Vatnan? We have a Mishnah later on in Daf Yud. This is the end of what's called the Revia Rishon, the first period of Gishamim in the autumn. That's the Shita of the Tanakama. That's when we begin to ask for the Shavra. Gamliel disagrees on B'Shiva Bo. We're going to wait until the 7th of Mar Cheshvan to begin She'elas Gishamim, which is 15 days after Chag Pesach, in order that the very last pilgrim who came to Yerushalayim, who's far away from Yerushalayim, he came for the Regel, for Aliyah Regel, he can get back to Nahar Paras, it'll take him 14 days. And therefore, calculating the last 7 days post-Sukkot with the first 7 days of Chodesh Cheshvan, so the last 7 days of the month of Tishrei plus the 7 days at the beginning of the month of Cheshvan, we have 14 days. And on the 15th day of Cheshvan, 15th day after the Chag, on the 7th day of Cheshvan, that's when we're going to begin to ask for Yeshavam. Rabbi Lazar Alocha ki Rabbi Gamliel. We paskin like Rabbi Gamliel. And the Gemara thinks that She'ela and Haskara are the same. And whenever we have She'ela, we have Haskara. So therefore, we have two different Piskei Halacha, which cannot be reconciled one with the other. When do we begin Haskaras Gishamim? Is it on Shmini Atzeres, or is it on the 7th of Cheshvan? Amalei, so Rav Asi responds to Rabbi Zera, Gavra Karomis. You're asking me a kasha from one man, the other one to the other. Rabbi Yochanan holds halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Lazar, on the other hand, holds that halacha is like Rabbi Gamliel. Or says Rav Asi, I can give you an alternative reconciliation. He plays Ema. I can reconcile Rabbi Yochanan with Rabbi Lazar and say Lo kasha kan l'shol kan lahaskin. When Rabbi Gamliel was dealing with this manim, he was talking about the hascholas she'elas gisham. And we paskin says Rabbi Lazar halacha kimosa. But Rabbi Yehuda was talking about hascholas haskaras gisham. And here's where Rabbi Yochanan accepted the halacha ki Rabbi Yehuda, and you cannot compare the zman for she'elas gishamim to the zman for haskaras gisham. The Gemara now raises what seems to be a contradiction in the Piskei Halacha of Rabbi Yochanan, because we've quoted, Rav Asi quoted the name of Rabbi Yochanan, Psak Halacha Rabbi Yehuda, that we begin Askaras Gevuras Geshamim on Shmini Atzeres. From Rabbi Yochanan, B'makom Sheshoel Mazkir. It seems that Rabbi Yochanan says that when you begin She'elas Kishamim, that's when you're Mazkir. But if there's no She'elas Kishamim, you're not Mazkir. So how can it be Askaras Kishamim on Shmini Atzeres? We don't ask for Kishamim on Yantiv. We don't have Baruch Aleinu. There are no Makashis in the Tefillah of Yantiv. So the Gemara answers, Hahulaf Soka Itma. When Rabbi Yochanan says that only when the She'elas Kishamim is there as Karas Kishamim, if there's no She'elas Kishamim, there's Karas Kishamim, that's as far as the Zman of Sukkah, when we terminate. In other words, we terminate She'elas Kishamim on Erev Pesach, and then, according to Rabbi Yochanan, we terminate likewise as Karas Kishamim. But as far as Ilas Amiros, at the beginning, we're going to begin to be Mazkir Kishamim on Shmini Atzeres, but the She'elah will be pushed off until after the end of the Chag. So Gemara asks for Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan says explicitly, Hiskil lahazkir maskil b'shol. As soon as you begin Azkara, you begin She'elah. Pasek milishol, posek milas. So we see that Rabbi Yochanan holds that the dinim of She'elah and Azkara are exactly equivalent. And not only in terms of the termination at the end on Erev Pesach, but also at the very beginning. So how can you tell me he begins Haskara on Shmini Atzeres when the She'elas Kishamim is going to wait till Chol after Yontif? Hello, Kasha. Alon Halahu. When Rabbi Yochanan says that once we begin Haskaras Kishamim, we begin She'elas Kishamim, that's addressing the Bnei Bava. They have lots of Tvua and Eros in the Sada during the entire month of Tishrei. Therefore, they can begin both mentioning Geshamim in Azkara and asking Geshamim She'elah on Zayin Cheshvan. But Halahu, when Rabbi Yochanan says the halach is Rabbi Yehuda that we begin Azkaras Geshamim on Shmini Atzeres, that's for the Bnei Eretz Yisrael. They will harvest their grains from the field during the month of Nisan, and they will gather together the grains on Tishrei. Tishrei is going to be the Zman Asif. And therefore, there's no chash to begin Hazkara from Tishrei. The Gemara tries to embellish this. Why is it that for us in Bavel, we begin Hazkara in Cheshvan? And the answer is the Islam Peri B'Davra. We have plenty of an ample supply of grains and fruits in the field. Nami, even for the Bnei Eretz Yisrael, we should be postponing Azkara till Cheshvan. Why? Because of the Ole Regolim. Islu Ole Regolim. They have to get back to their homes. If it's going to rain, it's going to be very difficult for them to make the trek, the journey back to their homes. So the Gemara answers, Rabbi Yochanan Bisman She'ein Beis HaMikdash Kayim. When Rabbi Yochanan accepted halacha to Rabbi Yehuda that we begin Azkara on Shmini Atzeres, he was talking about Zman She'ein Beis HaMikdash. There are no Ole Regolim, and therefore there's no reason for Bnei Eretz Yisrael to postpone their time period for the beginning of Haskaras Kishamim until the month of Cheshvan. Gemara adds, once you already clarified there's a difference between the Zman Beis Hamikdash Kaim and the Zman She'ein Beis Hamikdash Kaim, now we can reconcile in a very smooth way the contradiction in Rabbi Yochanan. And we can say, whether it's what the psak of Rabbi Yehuda or whether it's this psak of Rabbi Yehuda or that psak of Rabbi Yehuda, the difference is that when Rabbi Yehuda says that we begin Azkaras Kishavim and Sheilas Kishavim for the Bnei Eretz Yisrael, and Bizman Shebeis Hamikdash Kayim, and there's an issue of Ole Regom, we have to take that factor into consideration, and therefore we're going to delay the beginning of Azkaras Kishavim until Zayin Cheshvan. But now, Bizman She'ein Beis Hamikdash Kayim, we can begin Azkaras Kishavim as early as Shmini Atzeres. So the Gemara asks, Fanan Islan Trei Yomi, Echi Avdinon. We in the Bnei Bavel, we have Speika de Yoma, we have 2 days of Yontif, on which day of Shmini Atzeres or Simchas Torah, which of those 2 days should we begin Azkaras Kishavim? Is it on the 8th day, which is a suffix, whether it's the 7th, or should we delay it till Simchas Torah, the 9th day, which is a suffix Yom Shmini? Amarav Maskil b'Musafim uposek. He should begin Azkaras Kishavim in the Musaf of Yom Shmini, which is a suffix maybe it's Shvi, and uposek b'Mincha. And Mincha time he should terminate and omit Azkaras Kishavim on that day, because it's possible that that day is Shvi Shel Chag HaSukkos, and therefore it's not the appropriate time for Azkara until tomorrow in Tfilas Musaf. And so too, he doesn't mention Gishamim, Arvis v'Shachris, v'Chozer b'Musafim. On the 9th day, which is suffix Shmini, with regard to Tfilas Arvis v'Shachris, he should not be Mazkir because it might be Yom Chi, v'Chozer, and he begins to be Mazkir in Musaf. Because if yesterday was not Shmini Atzeres, then he should be begin Haskara in Musaf on the 9th day, which might be the 8th day. Amalo Shmuel. Shmuel says to the apparently Amoraim, who heard the words of Rav, Huku, go out, the Amaleli Abba, Rav was called Abba, my good friend, my colleague. Achar Shas Yoso Kodesh Tasucho, you're going to begin Azkaras Kishavim the Musaf of Shmini Atzeres, which is a suffix Shmi. And on Mincha time, you're going to be knowing a minhag of Chol. In other words, your minhag on Yom HaShmini, beginning at the Haskaras Kishavim Musaf, and the reason why you have Haskaras because it's the suffix Shvi. So you began Haskaras Kishavim on Musaf of Yom HaShmini, as we said before, because it's a suffix Shvi. And you're treating it as if it's Yom, meaning that it's Kodesh. It's not Oshana Rabbah, it's not Chol. And therefore you're beginning for Shmini Atzeres with Haskaras Kishavim Musaf. Now Taseu Chol, now you're going to omit Mincha on the same day of Shmini Atzeres, Haskaras Kishavim, making it into a day of Chol. As if you're telling me now I assume it's Yom Shvi. Before I assumed, when I was talking about Musaf, that it's Yom Shmini, and therefore I included Mashma Ruach. Now I get to Mincha, and all of a sudden I assume it's Yom Shvi. Elamar Shmuel, Maskil b'Musafim u'b'Mincha. Since Shmini is a suffix Shvi, we begin Haskara with Musaf. We continue Haskara Mincha time, and the entire day is considered Kodesh. Uposek, he should terminate Haskaras Gishamim, Arvis V'Shachris of Yom Shi, because the suffix Shvi. And now he has a suffix, maybe this day is Shmini Atzeres, and we don't mention Gishamim, neither in Arvis or in Shachris of Shmini Atzeres. We only start with Musa. Then Choser Umaschil b'Musafim, and therefore he's not dividing up the day half Kodesh and half Chol. He began Azkar with Musaf of Shmini, which was a suffix Shmini, but he's not posek during the entire day. And here we turn to Daf Hey Omer Aleph. Rava Omar. Rava says that even the Bnei Bavel, who have 2 days of Shmini Atzeres, even Shehiska, once they begin Haskaras Gishamim on the Musaf of Yom Shmini, which is a suffix Shmini, Shuv Eina Posek. He should continue being Mazkir Gishamim on all the fields of both days of Yom. V'chein Omer Rav Sheshet. Means even on Simchas Torah, we're going to continue with Haskaras Gishamim. Kevin Shehiska, Shuv Eina Posek. V'af Rav Haderbe, Rav himself rescinded his original position, and in its final conclusion, he accepts Rava and Rav Sheshes, and I'll prove it to you. Yomer Rav Hananel, Omer Rav, I'll give you a Simon Borer, a clear sign. When we begin Haskaras Gishamim in Chutzot Tzedek Mona Esrim V'Echad Yom, from the first day of Rosh Hashanah, we count 21 days. Kider Shemona Asar Yomim Rosh Hashanah and Yom HaKippurim. We're not sure exactly why he had to add that. Anyway, but Umaskil, he begins Haskaras Gishamim after 21 days. And the 22nd day is Shmini Atzeres, which is suffix Shvi, but Kevin Shehischil, Shuvein Posek. So you see that Rav was Choser, but now he agrees that once we begin Haskaras Gishamim on Yom Shmini, which is suffix Shvi, then we're not posting the Hilchos, Kevin Shehischil, Shuv Eino Posek. This is where we're going to stop for today. Thank you very much.